think this thing is on. All right, I wanted to watch this because listen, it's not that I necessarily have a problem with people who want to consider themselves communists. I just have a problem with the Communist Party because, I mean, at the end of the day, what they want is a violent revolution and an overthrow of the government for their party to take control. I feel like this doesn't really fit in American politics as a party, and I kind of agree with the fact that it was designated a terrorist organization. Yeah, because then what we did see is a lot more abuse of the labor workers and the whole working class, I think, more so than the upliftment of it. So it's always good to cheer for it, but when we're looking at their actual policy, has it really helped? Not really. And if we're looking at something like China, which, you know, Hasan, I mean, come on. I mean, they ended up kind of going more back to socialist, capitalist, starting to free certain parts of the economy and give it back to private people or whatever. That's my kind of general understanding, my general take right now. I don't like Hasan though, but I'm gonna give him a chance because I mean, you got to hear people out.
Hasan Piker, welcome to Trigonometry.
I don't like him though. I really don't.
Nice to be here, guys.
Why the big sigh?
Italy's Mussolini and Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany were ruthless fascist forms of governance. My fear is that that is where capitalism inevitably leads. There's too much instability.
Okay. Did he
Why
just
the
say?
big sigh?
Italy's Mussolini and Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany were ruthless fascist forms of governance. My fear is that that is where capitalism inevitably leads. There's too much instability, there's too much chaos. We need to restore order.
Is there a country that's done socialism the way that you like?
I would say China is probably the closest, I would say, to an example that we should follow.
Like communism in America?
I think that communism would be most likely an international thing. It'd be like the Star Trek universe.
Yeah, this is what they talk about when it comes to globalistic things. Like communism is literally a globalist problem. And that's what I think fundamentally the right is trying to reject and trying to stay America. And I agree with that a lot more. Because I believe in at least nation building to an extent. I am a nationalist. And you know, I'm sure most American nationalists would like not consider me American. That's fair. Kidding, it's not. It's really not. I'm born here, so eat my dick.
As a nascent
That's really
parliamentary group
sorry.
that hasn't reached its
And,
full
oh well,
potential.
yeah, but ethnically you're not here. Okay, well, mom came here legally. Father, I don't really know too much, but he was legal when I was born. So there you go. I was born here, and I don't speak a lick of any I have 20 languages to choose from Indian. I only really know like English. I was about to say American. That's how you know.
Relax, relax. This isn't an ad. If you're not a fan of ads but love trigonometry, join the thousands of trigonometry members who get extended interviews, no ads, early access, and the ability to submit questions for upcoming guests. Sign up now at triggerpod.co.uk or click the link in the description of this episode.
Weapon.
Hasan Piker, welcome to Trigonometry.
Hasan Piker. Hasan Piker.
Nice to be here, guys.
Why the big sigh?
I'm not talking
We'll see. We'll see how this
Wait,
goes.
yeah.
I'm getting cooked right now.
Yeah.
For those of you at home watching, and this has got to be extra weird for you guys because you're British, and this is what the sun looks like normally.
Oh, yo.
Yeah, no, it's nice to know. We are enjoying it. I'm sorry
Beautiful.
about the sun. This is not deliberate. We're not trying to cook you.
Hey, they set him up with great lighting. I'll say
welcome
that's
to
some
the
great
show.
lighting in the background
Tell us a
right
little bit
there.
about you. Like you obviously have got a massive Twitch channel. You're very successful streaming. Twitch is a gaming platform, but you talk on there, and that's what people follow you for. How did you get there? What's been your journey through life?
I started my professional media career, I guess, as a nepotism recipient at my uncle's 26-person YouTube startup media network. I feel like calling it a media network is interesting because, like, at that time, at that point, it was smaller than like a mid-tier podcast, you know. But I started there because I just wanted to not live in New
I like
Jersey.
the Young
I wanted
Turks.
to live in LA.
Pretty great.
And that's where the Young Turks headquarters were.
I don't like.
And I, much like virtually all of my peers, came out of college with a double major, great marks, and no job prospects whatsoever. So I was like, all right, I'll just start off my...
Wait, what the fuck are you talking about? You said you got your start at your uncle's... What are you talking about? You literally had opportunity.
journey
What?
here, and it'll allow me to not be in... It'll allow me to be in LA, where I want to be, right?
So you got where you want to be, and you got the job you want to do for the degree you got. What are you talking about?
And slowly but surely, I worked my way through the ranks there, offering a lot of free work, just as a fill-in producer or fill-in guest host whenever, you know, someone didn't show up, they were sick or something. While I was actually doing the advertisement stuff on the back end, I was basically the singular advertisement operations person. Not only was I creating client lists, but doing cold calls, trying to get DR campaigns going for the Young Turks and like fill the inventory of the Young Turks with some brand names that I think everyone is now familiar with, like Squarespace and things of that nature. That was a big client of mine initially. But I hated it. And I thought, you know, I think I could do better if I were on an on-camera position. And so, but the problem was I was horrible on camera at first. And I just kept going through it. My girlfriend at the time was like a model trying to become an actress. She was like, one of us has to actually work. And she was like, you should keep doing the advertising stuff to make money so that I can be, you know, a model, an actress, whatever. And I was like, okay. And even
so she was doing OnlyFans, making money, like, so she was doing pretty great.
You should stop doing this on camera stuff. You're not very good at it. And I was like, no, I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep doing it.
He's pretty good
because eventually I'll get better.
I remember watching one of his videos. I think it was with Hasan and Haj. And he was talking about how he'd write out his scripts and basically do like a full presentation on the stream and stuff like that, by reacting and stuff. That also was kind of pre-written. I think that's pretty smart. And kind of gather all your thoughts and stuff, and then kind of riff a little off here and there. Yeah, that's really cool. I definitely should be doing that, but I don't, to be honest.
Over the years, I did get somewhat better at it, but while I was at the Young Turks, I was doing all this stuff. I set up the show called The Breakdown. It was very successful because it aligned perfectly with the Facebook algorithm turning on the faucet for video content. This was when everyone was doing the pivot to video, BuzzFeed and all these other places. There's a company called Upworthy. I don't know if you guys recall. Way back in the day, they were getting like, you know, tens of millions of views a week, and my videos were getting like 30 million views a week. I was contesting Tommy Lauren's right-wing commentary at the time, and that was when I first made a name for myself, I guess, as a leftist political commentator. But I wanted something more. I wanted something that I could call my own. I wanted a sense of community for myself. I didn't want to be under the umbrella of the Young Turks as much as I was. So I thought to myself, I play video games already.
I do not think he's very much
when
a Democratic
I'm not working. Might as well go to this platform called Twitch. It was a video gaming platform at the time, even though there was some commentary happening there as well. And I decided I'm just gonna strap on a PlayStation camera onto my PlayStation 4 at the time and start live broadcasting and while I play Fortnite. And I have a bunch of other friends who are journalists, activists.
I gotta speed this shit up.
I play Fortnite with anyway.
Can't believe I watched this at regular speed.
There's a couple different reasons why I did that. Like I said, one, because I wanted to have something of my own, a media property of my own. The other reason was because I recognized that the gaming side of things, like the gaming culture side of that space, was heavily dominated by right-wing commentary, whereas gamers were much more diverse in their opinion, myself included. And I wanted to present an alternative I also wanted to go against the grain, because at the time, as we're talking about 2016, 2017, at the peak of like woke SJW cartoonish depictions of what the left represented, and there was some validity to the arguments that were being presented. Obviously, it was like the most maximalist, most ridiculous depiction of the left, but some people would lean into that a little bit, where they were like, no, we are like this, we are joy killers, we are woke skulls. And I was like, I don't think you have to be that. I think you can have fun and also still have progressive values. And I wanted to basically show that to a audience that had maybe never really encountered that. And I wanted to be in an environment that I was comfortable in as a male who games, and that was a very male-focused gaming space, which was. And last but not least,
Bro's really trying to appeal to the gamer audience. We know you're not a gamer, pal. Chill out. We know you're not a gamer. Just because you played Fortnite, bro, you're not a gamer.
I had always scripted my content. I was writing it, and then I would actually take the writing on my videos and turn it into a Huffington Post article. So I would just like reformat my scripts into an actual article, and that was fine. But I wasn't very good off the cuff. So I thought to myself, if I can play video game and talk about politics at the same time and be able to entertain people, maybe 30 at a time, maybe 300 at a time if I'm lucky, then I can get a lot better at public speaking and speaking off the cuff. And as you guys might have figured out by now, I never shut the cuff. So I guess it worked.
And you mentioned progressive values and that being something that's important to you. What are progressive values, would you say?
I think progressive values, for me at least, are founded around empathy first and foremost, to try and uplift everyone's material conditions to the best of our ability, and focusing on protecting those who need protection, and simultaneously advancing the cause of the way I think about it, advancing the cause of unlocking the potential of every single person, no matter where they are. Because right now, there are probably billions of brilliant people that never actually get the opportunity to unlock their true potential because of where they're born. Like, they might be born in Sudan, in a village that is being overtaken by the RSF. They might be born in India to an impoverished neighborhood and are not going to have the access to education, and therefore be able to truly revolutionize whatever sector they might be interested in revolutionizing. And I think that's what I want to do.
What do you think is the way to, because I think that's probably something the left and right actually agree on in my experience, you know, the center left, the center right, they're kind of moderate. But I suppose the disagreement probably is about what you think is the way by which that happens. So the right,
how you go about it, how you go about helping these people. But I'm definitely not for it when we're in like, everybody kind of agrees like, hey, not enough is really being done. Other countries are doing way better than us, and American people are just overall not well. The government's not doing well. Like, I just don't like, why would you exactly want to have mass immigration in here and be like, oh well, the GDP goes up and it helps and fills sectors of the economy. Like, okay, but like a lot of people are, you know, unemployed too, and a lot of people are looking for a path, but you know, even after 4 years in college, they can't even find the job unless they apply to like 160, and they might not even get the job they wanted. And you know, there's all the H-1B1 visa stuff. It's just, there's too much stuff against immigration. Like, I get the sentiment though, I really do. But I mean, you know, mass immigration is just not a smart thing in general.
Well, the answer to that is capitalism.
I'm fine with a small amount of immigration, especially. I feel like that's the only way the government could really control the economy in some regard, and they've definitely been abusing it. It's pretty clear, especially when like agriculture should really be in the hands of the American people, not in a bunch of foreigners for cheaper labor.
Right.
Yeah.
I imagine you don't agree. So how do you think those things get?
Especially, it should be in the hands of the younger generation, like coming out of college. Honestly.
People who don't currently have opportunity both in this country, in other Western countries, but around the world. What's the mechanism by which
and
they
honestly,
get those
more than anything, they need to get past this working class thing and really look at every single American as an entrepreneur at this point. Because like working class is going to be like a whole dead thing if you have like a labor market replaced by like robots. Like, it's going to be a very small section. And they're going to say working class, but really it's just going to be a majority of Americans. And that's, you know, you're gonna have Republicans say American, and then you're gonna have the left side say working class, and then they'd be like, oh, we've always been on the side of the working class. In the last 12 years, nobody really full on agrees with that. Especially after Biden, like, he closed so much small business, like, he killed the little, like, the small business entrepreneur class.
I think creating a robust base of support, like,
but that's not to say, like, again, I'm waiting for a Democrat to actually put policies that, like, people on the center right could at least, like, be like, oh yeah, well, okay, that's not too bad in terms of like, okay, well, like a good compromising position.
Like a minimum,
I don't know what
a
that
minimum
means,
social
to be
safety net
honest.
for
I
all
stopped thinking
is
about
the way to do it. And there are many different ways of achieving that result. I don't think capitalism has been able to do that. What I mean by that is capitalism still revolves around the inherent contradiction of at its most reductive way, to put it, someone's got to clean the toilet. And in an effort to make sure that there is always going to be people that are wage laborers, there is this dynamic where we can't we can't advance humanity too much. This plays itself out on an international scale in unequal exchange, where if we were to allow a lot of the third world to develop to a certain degree, then things would be far too costly. We wouldn't get the cheap materials and the cheap natural resources that we need to extract so that we can have an iPhone for the reasonable price of $500, or I mean, even that's increasing now.
Here's the problem. People like him are arguing about the price of stuff going up from the other places because they have to buy American goods, and American goods are going to be more expensive. The fact is that we just can't, like, American people, with the way labor laws are and how much regulation there is, there's no real competing labor-wise with China that doesn't really care about the labor laws as much. They're able to extract more out of their wage workers. So, like, I mean, I agree with him essentially, but
if we were to do that, by stopping our endless and needless and cruel militarism in the global South, and allow these places to develop, extend an open hand to them, that
nobody on the right's
allow
not
society to
saying.
flourish in ways that we previously have not foreseen.
Literally, I think everybody on the right is opposed to foreign intervention. So, like, I don't even know why he's like.
The point about cleaning toilets is interesting.
I mean, I think that's just shared
right, left, center, etc. Is the incredible wealth
right and left,
and the speed at which the gap is.
I mean, and then always to the extremists. Like, even I don't even think the left like realizes how much like globalist extremist like type stuff they have like in their policies. Where in California, you have like the oil. We could be getting the oil from like the ocean and mine off the coast and stuff like that. Instead, we're gonna get our oil imported from what, the Amazon rainforest. I feel like I read that somewhere. And we're just gonna kill the Amazon rainforest instead, because it's not really our land. Who cares? It's like irresponsible in a way.
Oh, that's a problem. It's a big problem. People on the right don't want to admit it, and it's true. But on the other hand, someone is always going to have to clean the toilets, right? Like, we have a pretty big safety net in the UK, and what that's mainly done is trapped a lot of people in a place where they don't have to work, and they therefore don't. And also, you talk about, you know, important people from other countries to work for less. Kind of the consequence of that is it suppresses wages for the people in the country as well. So who would clean the toilets if we...
So, great question. Let me
I agree to some extent of, like, they need to support... Like, I agree with, like, UBI. I think especially with the way things are going and jobs being replaced and these companies doing way overall better. Like, you need progressive taxation to at least provide some kind of minimum for people just to not be crushed by monopolies anymore, and to be crushed by foreign national corporations and stuff like that. Like, the average American citizen born here is just getting fucked over by leftist policies a lot of the time, and like right policies, because they're all globalists. It's like one big uniparty, and I really do feel like, I mean, Hasan's the kind of guy who would just fall for it, you know, and he's kind of
address the wage depression aspect of it.
I really think they're trying to push communism because it is it just enforces, they get more enforcement of the everyday lives of people, and I think that's just not the direction America should go. If every other I would rather America go off in a worse direction and be different from every other nation, even if that means for a short time. And I don't even think going off in a different direction because every other nation is doing well because of certain like communist socialist policies or whatever they implemented, those fundamentally disagree with like American values and freedom and stuff like that. I think the libertarian approach is a lot more what's needed, and the libertarian approach is what really like I think is what California is mostly about. Is about radical individuality. But then, you know, you got some people who are just like really left, like propagandized in California. I really don't know how it happened, considering again California has the highest amount of Republicans in any state.
Because this is the one
and again, and like, okay, well, you want to see how that happened? Of course, they have these fucking immigration laws, like, and they literally just importing. Everybody's just like, oh, Republican bad here. Everybody's like, just like defaulted that way in California. It's crazy. Anybody young here is defaulted that way. There's only like a handful, and you're not gonna find them in like SoCal at least.
Sometimes I hear Tucker Carlson talk about it, and there's like some nuggets of truth in there. Because yes, importing labor into the country.
There we go. Okay.
In the absence of good regulation, and good regulation in that format would be demanding wage parity, and also not creating any other external factors that actually cause you to have a more servile labor force. What I mean by this is I want to use the example of H-1B visas. The reason why H-1B visa system exists on paper is because there are certain highly skilled positions that, as it stands, our American companies are unable to fulfill. They're not able to fill those roles with the domestic labor force, right? That's on paper. In practice, of course, it creates a more pliable labor force that you're bringing in, oftentimes from highly skilled countries that are still desperate, even if there is higher wages on average on the H-1B visa program, because if you lose your job, you get deported. Nobody wants to get deported, so they will do everything in their power to stay and work as hard as they physically possibly can. So this creates an environment where I think our bosses, our capital owners in America, are like, why would I get an American worker who is, in comparison to an Indian worker that's coming into the country that is desperate to keep this job? Why would I hire the American worker? I can pay the same fee to the Indian worker, or even a higher fee, as a matter of fact, to the Indian worker, because I know that he is going to work harder than the American labor force. So there is this competition. The way to solve that competition is through regulation. If the workers that were coming in from poor countries were coming in with the knowledge that they are not going to be immediately deported, for example, and they have a domestic labor force, this would actually make American companies think twice before hiring someone just as a replacement for the American worker, because they wouldn't get any additional benefits as a boss. They wouldn't get the additional benefit of, like, I'm going to work you to the bone, right? Because I know if I fire you.
Here's an idea. You could just lower the limit of H-1B1 visa workers coming in. Like,
you're gone out of the country and you want to be here. So that is a regulatory mechanism that we never implement in this country, because our capital owners actually enjoy the two-tiered labor structure that we have here.
And come back to the who cleans the toilets, even when there's a social welfare system.
I think that ultimately there's going to be people that fulfill these roles no matter what, and increasingly with automation and AI, we're getting to the point.
This is the same guy who'll tell you, oh, well, they're just hating on me, and then he'll, like, say, like, again, they're the type of people who make fun of the, the immigrants are taking our jobs, like,
outcasts are already being delegated to.
So, like, how am I supposed to take it seriously when it comes to actually caring about the American worker?
There's always going to be someone that is tasked with this, tasked with either overseeing it, if it's a robot doing it, or directly doing it. But since it's an important factor in the commodity production, because someone has to engage in sanitation, I think it's much more valuable to ensure that they have a sense of autonomy and that those positions are hired and have enough. They have enough replacement labor force so that they do less hours in general and still get a decent amount of pay, and so they can still feel human and have some sense of autonomy in the labor force where they can do that job.
I think labor laws. I think politicians make a big deal off of changing labor laws. I think it's not a big deal for changing it, and because like all companies just try to like find ways around it anyways. So like, you know, companies are just gonna do what they're gonna do, and then like. The government's not being hard enough on them, like, and not forcing them in a weirder way, like, I'm not speaking well right now. How'd I put it? Shit, I was attacking this guy, sorry. I'm getting double attacked, you bitches. Dude, I'm fucking goated right now, holy shit. Wait a minute. Fuck it up, let's go. Oh, fuck yeah, you're next, bitch. Okay, you're done. What was I talking about?
The idea that people who are working every kind of job should have free time and make a good living. The question is, how do you do that? Because in a market economy, what you are paid is a function of what you produce, right?
Well, I think in a market economy, what you are paid should be what you produce. I don't think that that's how it works in the market economy. I think in the market economy, your replaceability is what determines your wages, especially if you are replaceable by a non-domestic labor force, for example. That depresses your wages even further on the domestic front, or the citizen labor force. So I think you're right, though. In the market economy, your output should be the determining factor. That's actually a socialist position, ironically enough. Not all socialists are... determines your wages, especially if you are replaceable by a non-domestic labor force, for example.
I don't think that's necessarily true. Market replaceability determines your wages. I don't think that's true.
Especially if you are replaceable by a non-domestic labor force, for example. That depresses your wages even further on the domestic front for the citizen labor force.
Well,
so
I
think you're right, though. In the market economy,
I gotta slow this shit down, bro.
Determining factor. That's actually a socialist position.
I don't know too much of a socialist position.
I think it's much more valuable to ensure that they have a sense of autonomy and that those positions are hired and have enough. They have enough replacement labor force so that they do less hours in general and still get a decent amount of pay, and so that they can still feel human and have some sense of autonomy in the labor force where they can do that job and still make an honest living and be able to feed their family, and also have some free time on the side to pursue whatever hobbies they want to pursue.
So the way to achieve that would be like what, a really high minimum wage, or like what's the way to get there? Like, 'cause I agree with the idea that people who are working every kind of job should have free time and make a good living. The question is, how do you do that? Because in a market economy, what you are paid is a function of what you produce, right?
Well, I think in a market economy, what you are paid should be what you produce. I don't think that that's how it works in the market economy. I think in the market economy, your replaceability is what determines your wages, especially if you are replaceable by.
I don't think that's what really determines it. I think it's a factor.
Your wages even further on the domestic for the citizen labor force. So I think you're right, though. In the market economy, your output should be the determining factor. That's actually a socialist position, ironically enough. Not all socialists are against the market, and I would say that the output is the most consequential factor in that regard. I agree. What that means, however, is that if the company is actually, for example, increasing its output and therefore generating more revenue overall, then everyone down to the most replaceable aspect of labor, which would be sanitation in this regard, should still get paid a just wage, like fair compensation. Minimum wages is one way of doing it as a band-aid solution. I mean, but there are many countries, for example, where there is no minimum wage, because the minimum wage would ironically be a depressing factor on the overall average wages that people get. How have they achieved this, though? They've achieved this through sectoral bargaining. They've achieved this through robust unions and labor participation in these wage negotiations. And that is the reason why they don't need to have a minimum wage. The minimum wage in itself
I do
is
think there needs to be some
and
kind of unionization that needs to happen in America. I do agree with
States of America and a lot of other Western countries, only because our labor union participation in the United States is at less than 10% right now, which is unimaginably low. It's lower than countries that we have dominated, like Chile, where we rewrote their constitution basically. And
again, and I think the reason why labor unions just don't really have that much of a ground to stand on is because, again, like, these corporations are backed up by the government, and again, they keep pitching it as like the working class taking over democratically, but really, they're sleeper communists. So the working class is gonna have a violent revolution, and take back everything. Can we hold this? Take all. Okay. I have everything. Okay, cool. Where was I? Fuck the square, baby.
Wanted to unleash a wave of neoliberalism, sometimes in the hands of a dictator like Pinochet. Even in that country, there's still 50.
Get the fuck out of the way. Subtitles. Primarily by Chile, own military regime, a conservative Chilean lawyer such as. Okay.
15% labor union participation, so it's still higher than the United States of America, which is crazy to me.
If you've been following the immigration debate, you'll know how different the headlines can look depending on where you get your news. We use ground news to help us step outside the echo chamber.
Well, again, like, if you look back in the 60s and 50s,
so you can compare headlines and decide for yourself.
Well.
Take the story about a massive immigration rate at a Hyundai plant.
I mean, look at a lot of immigrants in California. They just came to the country and did well, like, for themselves. I think there's a lot that didn't, and I think again, that was just bound to happen. If you just do mass immigration, a mass amount of people are going to fail in a small state.
Straight away, we can quickly see that the story is being covered by outlets across the board. However, scrolling down the page,
That's
Ground News allows me to easily compare the headlines. We can see CNN, which is firmly on the left, highlighted that nearly 500 workers were taken, while Fox News, on the right, framed the raid as what's being emphasized is ground.news. Labour. So, for context, my mother is a Venezuelan immigrant to the UK. When she was in the UK, she was a childminder. There was no minimum wage. My mum, roughly, I remember earning £2.20 an hour. There were no pension rights. So thankfully, I help my parents out. My dad helps my mum out, so she's not destitute. But that's what my mum's position would be if she didn't have me or my father. As somebody who is from Venezuela, I worry when people mention socialism because I've seen what's happened to my country. How would you assuage the fears of people like me or people who come from a Cuban background who've seen the socialist dream, as it were, descend into authoritarianism?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that all countries, to varying degrees, engage in authoritarianism in general. It's just something that it's a function of the government. It obviously has the capacity to get out of hand due to external factors in many instances, like combating much more powerful forces that want to cause instability in your country. It's not a justification for it, but it is analysis in terms of like why these guys engage in the actions that they do in terms of suppression of all dissent or even censorship and sometimes even jail time. And the example I always use is the United States of America. Not only in the Cold War, but even preceding the Cold War, during World War I and World War II, actually had a practice of jailing all conscientious objectors, for example, who said, I don't want to fight in this war. They were like, all right, well, this is a world war, sucks this up, you're going to jail. One of the famous examples is Eugene Debs, a socialist who actually ran from prison and I think achieved like 1.3 million votes at the time, which was probably the most electoral success socialists ever achieved. He was a conscientious objector of World War I, which was the international Marxist
I think
position.
a lot of people don't understand how much socialism there was in the United States.
At the time, there was some deviation there. So I see it in a similar vein.
It was communism that killed it.
Authoritarian actions, suppressing dissent, censorship, or trying to manage this dynamic of trying to continue doing governance while at the same time they have to like make sure that they're avoiding American intervention or Western intervention in general. As far as the fears that people have, assuaging the fears that people have in terms of what they've seen in their countries, whether it be Venezuela or Cuba. I think each country is different. Each successful and unsuccessful revolution is different, and I think it's important to understand.
I would also not
the
trust the
lessons
current
and
left wing to do an actual revolution that's actually meaningful.
failures,
Let's just
as
say
well as
that.
some of the areas of success that these countries have been
I
able to
definitely
implement.
get that more from
Win
the right
failures
wing.
and try to focus on the successes, and hopefully you'll be able to have a long-standing and relatively happy form of governance.
I mean, I take your point as to the conscientious objector, but you look at Venezuela, for example, and the reason I'm using it is because that's the example I know best.
Yeah.
You know, you've got rigged elections, you've got politicians who go up against Maduro, they're either thrown in jail, as in the case of Leopoldo Lopez, solitary confinement for 2 years, or you have, I think it's Corina
What the
Machado,
fuck?
who got nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize, but she is currently in hiding in her own country because she knows the moment that her whereabouts are known, she's going to get thrown into jail, may not be seen again.
Yeah. I'm not going to defend Maduro, but I would say that.
Yeah, you know, I find it funny. A lot of immigrants are actually like defending, like they're mostly on Trump's side when it comes to all this like war stuff with their countries, because like again, they're war-torn countries. They're difficult countries to live in, and I'm honestly, I don't necessarily disagree with some intervention with these like crazy authoritarian ones, and I get it, you know. I guess, you know, we've never really seen it work out well, so I guess like in principle, like I still would be against it, but there are a lot of immigrants that, you know, do support it. Especially like again with that stuff happening, like
The
hey,
logical through line, and it's important to understand the opposition's logical through line in this instance, is that these are forces that are very directly working with the United States of America, that have tried to facilitate coups, even had an unsuccessful one all the way back in 2002 with Chavez, and numerous other instances, openly talked about implementing coups under the first Trump administration, and is openly now waging war, or at least threatening to wage war with Venezuela right now, encircling the entire coastline of
you
Venezuela.
know, it's about like waging coups and stuff, and the like again, I think everybody kind of has a not like a we don't want to intervene with other countries like basic like. That's their default. It's like, okay, we don't want like the government to be doing fucked up things in other countries. Everybody kind of agrees with that. Where the fuck was I going with this?
Some of the most sufficient logical through line in this instance is that these are forces that are very directly working with the United States of America, that have tried to facilitate coups, even had an unsuccessful one all the way back in 2002 with Chavez, and numerous other instances, openly talked about implementing coups under the first Trump administration.
With that, but it's not like they're doing that
or at least
here.
threatening to wage war with Venezuela right now, encircling the entire coastline of Venezuela with some of the most sophisticated weaponry known to man. In that regard, I think they see it as treason. I would go so far as to say, in a similar scenario in the United States of America, I think, and this is not even a one-to-one dynamic because America is the most powerful nation on the planet, but China is getting up there, right? Let's see if China had, if in a hypothetical, if China had encircled the United States of America, and let's say in this hypothetical, I'm like very clearly someone who is going to China and talking to the CPC and saying like, we want Chinese intervention in this country because I hate Donald Trump, please. I think in that regard, America would probably treat me in the exact same way, if not in a worse way, ironically enough.
But would they throw you in jail for trying to run democratically? I don't think personally that they would.
They absolutely would, I think. You think the American government would not throw me in jail if I was in a comparable scenario where China had encircled the United States of America, and I was saying, I want to run democratically, I want to be
wait, hold on.
In that regard, I think they see it as
I gotta
logical through line, and it's important to understand the opposition's logical through line in this instance. Is that these are forces that are very directly working with the United States of America, that have tried to facilitate coups, even had an unsuccessful one all the way back in 2002 with Chavez, and numerous other instances, openly talked about implementing coups under the first Trump administration, and is openly now waging war, or at least threatening to wage war with Venezuela right now, encircling the entire coastline of Venezuela with some of the most sophisticated weaponry.
Yeah, but isn't it a fascist
regard,
regime?
I think they see it as.
Hold on. What is the current ideology of the Venezuela regime in power? No, do I lose this? There's no way. Oh wait, I don't lose that.
Is treason. I would go so far as to say, in a similar scenario in the United States of America, I think, and this is not even a one-to-one dynamic because America is the most powerful nation on the planet, but China is getting up there, right? Let's see if China had, if in a hypothetical, if China had encircled the United States of America, and let's say in this hypothetical, I'm like very clearly someone who is going to China and talking to the CPC and and saying like, we want Chinese intervention in this country because I hate Donald Trump, please. I think in that regard, America would probably treat me in the exact same way, if not in a worse way, ironically enough.
But would they throw you in jail for trying to run democratically? I don't think personally that they would.
Oh, they absolutely would, I think. You think the American government would not throw me in jail if I was...
Yeah, if you're representing a foreign government and foreign government policy in American politics, yeah, I think you would go to jail. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Scenario where China had encircled the United States of America, and I was saying, I want to run democratically, I want to be, and I'm demanding that China intervene, I think they would do the same, if not worse, for sure. Because like I said, it's all a matter of the conditions on the ground. With respect to Eugene Debs, as I was talking about before, America felt threatened even at that time.
You're talking about wartime.
Yeah.
This is not a fair comparison, in my opinion, because wartime is wartime. It's about survival. Britain suspended elections during wartime, right? Like,
America didn't actually. They did. They even during the Civil War.
But Britain did. America wasn't in war in the same way that Britain was.
That's why I said during the Civil War.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's fair. But again, it's different. I guess you said something interesting because I was born in the Soviet Union, so we both have direct experience of socialism in various shapes and forms. You talked about well, there's positives and there's negatives. So
you have two people born here who have links to socialist countries that they disagree with.
The way that you like.
I would say that I am hypercritical of all forms of governance, including the American one. I think that's not a surprise to you guys, right? And in that same vein, I think like there is critiques to apply to all forms of governance, even socialist ones.
Yeah.
And as far as like getting closer to what I think has been relatively successful, because if ultimately the point of government is to improve the material conditions of all people to the best of your ability, it's not always going to be perfect, but when you are getting, I don't know, the poorest people, the poorest or the dispossessed masses out of a situation where they were servile, the landed gentry, or they were peasants from an agrarian society, or they were dominated by the landlord, but then ultimately they were able to come into modernity and become like a powerhouse, an industrial powerhouse that is competitive with the largest superpower on the planet. I would say if that's the point of good governance, and I think you guys might agree with me on that, I would say China is probably the closest. And there are still plenty of failures within the Chinese system as well, plenty of issues within the Chinese system as well, but that's probably the closest, I would say, to an example that we should follow and lessons that we should learn from. This is something that I talk about quite a bit. Ironically enough, we only utilize some of the most repressive elements of Chinese governance here in the United States of America, especially in the second Trump administration, and none of the good stuff. We don't have any high-speed rail. We don't have any even development. There is seemingly nothing to look forward to in America in terms of economic prosperity, in terms of overall health of society, in terms of scientific achievements. And I think a lot of younger people also feel the same way, where they feel like there's nothing to look forward to here. And I'll give you guys an example from the UK. I remember seeing this TikTok of this guy that goes around and is like asking young British people, would they serve in the British military? And I am not even remotely nationalistic by any measure. I don't care about those sorts of things. But I think it's important to understand, like, it's a good way to see the temperature of society. And a lot of the young British people were like, no, why would I fight for England? Why would I fight for the UK when it seems like my government's not even fighting for me at all? And
see, the reason that a lot of them will say that, though, is it's not so much about that we're not like China in terms of building high-speed rail, although that is a big issue in the UK.
Yes.
I agree with you. The main reason is they feel like they've been let down by mass immigration that's eroding the values of their country. And of course, this is where I think people on the right are very blind to this issue that we already raised, which is wealth inequality and opportunity. Right?
I'm sure there are some people who feel that way, of course, but...
well, think about this, Hasan. Right? Hold on, let me just finish the point. Like, stereotypically speaking, is it left of center people or right of center people that are going to go and fight for their country? Typically, it's going to be right of center people because of the mindset that they have, right?
I think when push comes to shove, everybody fights for their country, because that's why you have to have a draft.
In a war, but what we're talking about in this situation is, will you go and serve in armed forces? That is going to be a more right-leaning perspective. And those people, we probably fair to say know the UK pretty well. Those people are concerned about the national identity of their country. It's like, why would I fight for a country that doesn't feel like my country? Is the issue for them.
This is where the big point of division comes for someone like myself.
I think America's a lot more different.
Originally, like your family came from Venezuela, your family came from the USSR. You guys are the most British people I've ever encountered.
I'm very British face, you're correct.
Yeah, exactly. You're British to the bone.
Yeah.
And yet, your families also came from countries that were somewhat far away from England, right? Yeah. And I'm Turkish. I grew up in Turkey. My whole family lives in Turkey still, with some exceptions. And I would say I'm pretty assimilated to American culture. I grew up being fascinated by American culture. I grew up consuming American pop culture, as do many people all around the world. And what I always find interesting is when people focus on the newcomers to say that this is actually destroying the social fabric or social cohesion, not realizing that there are a ton of polls conducted on this stuff. I can just speak for America, especially, where by the second generation, assimilation is almost complete, and by the third one, it's like virtually impossible to distinguish in terms of performance, education, output, and job performance in general. It's just like everyone becomes American.
That's not true in the UK, though, unfortunately. So if you look at, for example,
I think UK is a lot more different situation. It's also like it has a lot more historic precedent compared to America, which is really like a new and early country, and like we've really pushed away for
second and third.
I think just overall like universal human love in a way, where any person can come here and commit to the American way, American dream, and be a part of this country. While other ones, it's like, you know, they really do prefer their ethnic identity, and there is an ethnic identity in America, but there is now in the future, like, whether you like it or not, there's going to be an ethnic identity of Mexicans in America. There's going to be an ethnic identity of what is it, Indians. There's going to be an ethnic identity of whites, and they're like the original ethnic identity. And again, I get that there's a white side who don't like the immigrants and immigration. I think you're like grandpa politics at the end of the day. That most people are already past, and yeah, I think the blue wave is definitely gonna come. I'm just hoping like there's politicians I could support, but usually there's not.
Third generation Muslims are much more radical than first generation.
Yeah,
so we're not. That's the issue that a lot of people embrace.
Yeah, that's
by the second generation, assimilation is.
I just don't think America actually has that problem. I think America just has a radicalization problem in general, coming from leftist culture. I think theirs is definitely coming from an ethnic religious identity, which is more of a right-leaning ideal.
Is almost complete, and by the third one, it's like virtually impossible to distinguish in terms of performance, educational output, and job performance in general. It's just like everyone becomes American.
That's not true in the UK, though, unfortunately. So if you look at, for example, Islamist radicalization, second and third generation Muslims are much more radical than first generation.
Yeah,
so we're not. That's the issue. That
I don't even blame Americans for being scared of it. I think honestly, to a certain extent, I've thought about this for a bit. Soul Wars portal. What the fuck? What the fuck is this? What's your governor? Talk to Nomad. Okay, well, what the fuck was I talking about? Shit.
The three of us are.
So here's the interesting point about that. Well, two things I want to address. First, like I said, people assimilate. And they become a part of the normal forces of society.
I think becoming a part of the American identity is a lot easier than people think. I think there's people who have a hard time dealing with foreigners, and there's people who just generally don't really care. And yeah, I mean,
British culture, you know, they changed the
cuisine. Had a hard time to like. I don't know. I just don't think California people have a problem with that. And it's obviously because we're like super high, like a bunch of ethnicities in here and all that stuff. It's very different here. But I do get the frustration. Like I do think like for H-1B1 visas and definitely like regular immigration, like you have to have the bottom line be like, okay, do you speak at least like conversational English? Can you read like in English? I think that's like a fine baseline for any country to have is, can you read the fucking language? If you're interested, let's do it. Okay, cool. 500 and combat level 40? God damn.
A little quick curry afterwards, or a little kebab on the side. But beyond that, the reason why people are angry is always going to be because the trains are not running on time, because the NHS is improperly managed due to underfunding. That's what I believe. I think it's always an issue of underfunding.
It's not an issue of underfunding. It's an issue of overspending. Like, does anybody out here in California actually think we're like underfunded? Like, no, they're just overspending and wasting money and like moving around, tossing around. Like, nobody's arguing that like, okay, there's rich people obviously like kind of doing their own thing. For Rose Enclave, holy shit. Huh. I'm exploring right now. Okay. Sorry,
used to, and also things are becoming more and more costly. So in that anger, it's much easier for them to be guided by a right-wing, guided by the right-wing forces to turn around and say, you're angry and you're right to be angry. And the reason why you're angry, the reason why all of these things are happening is because we are importing all of these random strangers into the country who don't speak your language, who you are scared by. And that, I think, causes division, and it causes friction that makes it harder for people to integrate. And that is part of the reason why I think, especially in a place like the UK, you see a little bit more of this resilience towards full-blown integration into society.
I also think as well, Hasan, if we're being honest, it's also because we have had such huge amounts of immigration come into the country. The people...
you know, I've also noticed it's specifically like, I don't want to be like bowling, but I think it's specifically a Muslim problem because it's definitely a problem exacerbated by the Jews. And it's definitely a thing of Christians being easily propagandized too. They hate Muslims, and then like naturally, because there's a whole side on the right wing that is hardcore Christian and don't care really about the you know, forgiveness part of Christianity and the welcoming of pagans and sinners, and trying to, like, you know, find this universal love through Jesus. And I just feel like a lot of right-wing Christians just don't, like, again, they don't take that seriously. I've never seen a Christian really take it seriously except for, like, Cliff Canetchel. I mean, like, except until the last, like, couple years. I think that's why, like, Christian right-wing blew up. But, like, again, they were easily being super propagandized. But it's also because I think Christian voices were really suppressed, especially white Christian voices. But it was mainly just Christian voices in general because they always linked it back to white people. So it was, like, a good kind of situation.
Understandably, this pace of change is too much. And you have to think, let's go back to 2016, which was the Brexit referendum. Now, Brexit was about many things, but really it was about people wanting immigration to be lowered. And that was 9 or 10 years ago. Immigration hasn't been lowered. In fact, it's been ratcheted up. So people voted to lower immigration, and for instance, I voted Remain. People voted Brexit. I'm like, well, that's democracy. We get on. We're going to make the best of it. I do believe that when you ignore people's wishes...
I don't know how British politics work. I didn't even know they get a vote, if I'm being honest.
People explicitly vote for something, and you ignore them for the best part of a decade. That does generate a lot of anger, and understandably so.
Yeah, I think in that same time frame...
Yeah, that's very true.
If there was enough appetite by the government to address the financial harm that people were experiencing, the economic struggles that people were experiencing, there would still be a lot of people who say, I don't want a brown person, I don't want a black person around in my neighborhood, but ultimately those numbers would be far smaller. And that's what I always go back to. I'm a leftist. I believe in economic improvements, and I believe that a lot of the reactionary forces actually take advantage of that instability, the economic volatility that exists, in an effort to shift the attention away to people who have the same exact interests as you and I do. Because ultimately, I don't believe that anyone is coming into the United States of America or the UK, as a matter of fact, because they want to bring about a Salafist-style Islamic caliphate in London. I know you won't agree with me on this.
It's not about whether I agree, it's about whether the facts agree with you.
I don't think
I think isn't it like 82 or something, or like 32? I saw that one clip of the one lady at the protest over here in America in Dearborn, Michigan. She was from the UK talking about how it happened to them, and then they ended up having like literal like court Sharia law inside, you know, their whole government. It's just like kind of weird, isn't it?
Just give you some facts then. If like, we have a terrorist attack on a monthly basis.
Yeah, I just would not expect that in Britain. Or London at all, or in the UK.
In the space of the last month as we're recording this.
United Kingdom.
33%, I think, of British Muslims want Sharia law in Britain.
I don't think, this might be unpopular, but I really don't think church, Christianity should remove, what is it? Removing church from state. I don't think England should do that at all. Yeah, I really don't think they should do that. I think America should maintain its religious liberty. But if I had to, I had to put a gun in my head and ask me, hey, what religion is merit? It is a Christian country. But again, I'd really only push for the Gospels at this point, and really Catholicism, since it's Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy, and really trying to bring about like a welcoming Christian renaissance to all pagans. I think America could do that more than any other country. But I just don't see the UK as being, you know, having a gigantic Muslim majority. I definitely see America having one. Like, I can see America having more ethnic minorities in their country, and a lot more of them. I would not expect that from Britain.
Like, according to polls? More than half want to ban well, we can put them in for people to see. More than half want to ban homosexuality, right? So when you say people aren't coming in to introduce an Islamist, well, some of them want to if they're in a position to do so. We have 5 MPs are effectively elected on a sectarian ticket, like as in we are Muslims, vote for us because you're a Muslim.
Who would you say those MPs are?
The 5 independent MPs, they're called the Gaza MPs or whatever way you want to call them.
Are you talking about like Zara Sultana?
I don't know if she's one of them. I think one of them is called Adnan Hussein. There's 5 of them. We can look them up. We can put them in for people to see. Right. So I think it should be said that the overwhelming majority of British Muslims don't want Sharia law. But if 33% of them do, you can see why a lot of people who don't want Sharia law might be concerned about that, right?
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know what I haven't seen these polls, and I also don't know what British Muslims or the 33% that are saying they want Sharia law, like what they're talking about.
If you want smart, fearless commentary on the craziest things happening in media, politics, and online culture, you'll love the Brad versus
I don't know too
Everyone
much about
podcast,
Sharia law.
hosted by Brad Palumbo, an independent journalist.
The counterexample always is, I mean, there's plenty of right-wing
like
forces in the country that also want to
America?
ban homosexuality
No,
or trans people in general, right?
No,
Like
no one wants to ban trans people in Britain. No.
Okay, well, that's not what I have seen so far, but maybe I'm wrong on this.
What do you mean?
But I mean, I feel like there's a lot of this is a point of contention for you guys as well. But it's like when you want to ban trans people altogether, when you want to remove access to medication.
Okay, this just isn't like a. They try to make it into a federal issue or like a national issue that like a social issue that everybody should care about. It's like, wow. What is this conversation that we're really having here?
To
come on,
transition and conform their own gender identity, you don't start off by saying we want to altogether ban trans people. You start off by trying to find the most successful approach that the broadest majority of the masses would be in tune with, would be in agreement with, and then you slowly but surely expand on it.
Wouldn't that be like me saying? Wouldn't that be like me saying, well, you say you want socialism, but actually you're a communist because you just want to edge your way towards communism step by step?
That's what
that
it
seems
is.
like an unfair way of looking at it.
He's a tanky. He's a communist.
I don't have an issue with an end goal of communism. I don't think it's like
okay,
I just think that it's probably not likely to happen, a stateless, moneyless, borderless society. But moving towards that end goal, I don't have any real...
You'd like communism in America?
I think that communism would be most likely an international thing. It'd be like the Star Trek universe. And it feels, especially at this point, it feels far too utopian to achieve. So while I think that the concept in and of itself is not one that I disagree with, and I don't think you would either. Don't you think it would be nicer?
I grew up in a communist country.
I think he is...
The USSR was, as you... And I don't think you would either. Don't you think it would be nicer?
I grew up in a communist...
And it feels, especially at this point, it feels far too utopian to achieve. So while I think that the concept in and of itself is not one that I disagree with.
Okay, so you are pushing for communism is what you're saying?
You think it would be nicer?
I grew up in a communist country. I very strongly disagree with the concept of communism.
The USSR was, as you know as well, trying to implement communism. They never actually were able to successfully implement communism.
How do you mean?
Well, it wasn't
it wasn't your version of communism, because any version of communism or socialism that didn't succeed isn't their version of communism or socialism. That's always the go-to. And it's like, listen, dude, you have to go off of what happened. Like, this was the end goal that happened, and you're saying, oh well, there is no real end goal like that ever happened. Well, okay, but there was the attempt that happened.
No, that is
that 9 times that happened.
Russia defined it.
Well,
there was a big debate within communism quite early on, which was about, are we pursuing a global state of communism?
Trotsky versus Stalin. I'm very familiar.
Right, but for our audience, this might be worth explaining.
Yeah.
Some of them wanted to, they basically recognized the only way you might ever get to a communist society is if everyone in the world gets it. Otherwise, there will always be a capitalist system to which people would be keen to defect. Or, this is the Stalin option that they ended up going for, is you pursue communism within the realm of one country. And in order to do that, they took the wealth away from people who had it. They tried to distribute it to everybody else. They tried to create a state of equality, uplift the poor, as you were talking about. And actually, if you take those measures alone, they were very successful at it. The only problem is they ended up putting millions of people in camps in order to do that, creating a tyrannical regime with a secret police that murdered people. And that is the reason communism, in my opinion, doesn't work, is because in order to achieve that goal of equality, and basically you're making everybody equally poor as the end result, you actually have to use a lot of force, right? So
my whole thing was this idea of like equality is like, okay, but it literally just fuels a generation that only sees life as was it the poor versus the rich, and once you become rich, you're part of the rich, and you're like that evil, and it's like it's just very anti-success. Like, wow, it's very backwards thinking, I think, to make sure people who are succeeding and bring them down to us to a level like just equalizing everybody seems like a bad idea, you know?
The end goal was never successfully achieved in the USSR in terms of establishing.
But I don't necessarily disagree with like, okay, well, people shouldn't be billionaires. I'm kind of okay with people being billionaires, to be honest. I think it's kind of sick that you could become a billionaire. I don't necessarily know how these people did it though. They're probably CIA operatives or something. Who knows?
What I'm talking about though, and that's why I'm saying it's important to understand and recognize the failures of this implementation.
But also, come on, maybe they're not. They're not. I'm being a little stupid. Come on. But yeah, I mean, if you could at least get them to like 100 $50,000 salary, if everybody was able to get up to that and not be heavily taxed, that would be the most ideal thing. And inflation kept in check and the market, you know, doing its own thing. You just kind of want everything to work by itself and not need government intervention all the time. And you get this by proper regulation, proper policy, which I think both parties have failed at. Like, we look at Obamacare, and it was supposed to pay itself off. It wasn't supposed to add to the debt. It was, like, supposed to be, like, by this time, it wasn't, the time it's set to expire, it was already supposed to be a succeeded program, and it failed. So it's set to expire. Bye. And then they're arguing for it for another, they were trying to argue it for another year. Thank God they didn't let it pass. That shit was stupid.
The aftermath of a socialist revolution, and
especially since a lot of the Medicare stuff was just more spending from COVID and stuff like that. COVID's over. Like, you know, it's fine to draw the money back. It's fine. And I get it, like, okay, well, healthcare is like the #1 problem. And I do think Marjorie Green is right when they're like just not even trying to address the issues directly. It's just they're trying to do band-aids. I think that's more of a actual Cenk Uygur standpoint of like everything they're doing is band-aids. Like, okay, cool. They did they're trying to pass Roe Connor's bill, lower drug prices like historically and stuff like that in America. But again, it's just a band-aid to the overall problem of these insurance companies getting away with a lot of bullshit. I did see he was doing something to insurance companies, though. I forget what. I have to look at it again.
So how would you do it differently?
Well, that's the reason why I pointed to China. China is run by the Communist Party of China.
China, here we go.
It bills itself as communist. China is not a communist country. Would you say China is a communist country?
It's a mixed country. It has some elements of communism, but it's also got a lot of capitalism going on.
Yeah,
right?
so it's a mixed market economy is what you're saying, right? But so is the United States of
Okay,
America if you look at it from that perspective.
Listen, you can't just call everything a mixed market economy because it's got more aspects. Right now, America is more of a socialist economy. 60% of the revenues that we're getting in are going to social programs. It's sure it's a mixed economy because capitalists and stuff. People can get their wealth and people can be rich. But like, come on, we got other spending issues going on too.
Because America also has some semblance of social safety nets. The UK also has some social safety nets, some state-run enterprises.
Especially what do you want more of, what do you want less of?
Versus,
and then they just kind of spam you with just political ideology.
Venezuela at its peak, I think, had more privatization and more private enterprise in its economy than France did, as a matter of fact. I believe there was like a report at around 2012, maybe, where they were talking about how like Venezuela is not socialist. It's like, when these sorts of countries, and you're not wrong, it's a mixture of both, right? It exists. Social safety nets exist. Some extrapolation initiatives exist. Like when you think about Norway, for example, the entirety of the extraction industry in Norway is actually nationalized from the forestry all the way down to the oil and gas industry. But then there's also the private market as well, private enterprise as well. So as far as that goes, I wouldn't say that China is a communist, and neither would you.
I think the problem with politics nowadays, they're just trying to push they're trying to get like one political ideology, and then they just push it off the edge. And like it's just it goes too far.
And
like, everybody agrees with this basic here's this basic line everybody agrees with. Let's push it to the edge now.
A pretty robust
gay marriage is great. Trans and kids, not so great.
Growth and development overall. So they have analyzed the failures of previous communist and socialist formations, and they have responded to it in their own way.
The challenge is, Hasan, when you centralize power and you give practically all the power to the government, what happens with that is you're far more likely to have corruption, you're far more likely to have abuse of power, and inevitably what happens is that the government can't do everything. There are things that are far better done by private practice than done by state control. So if you
I agree with that. Would you also agree that there are things that are far better done in the hands of the government, or at least with like heavy market regulation and intervention?
I completely agree.
Because like healthcare, I think is a great example of this, where like it's an inelastic demand, good, and service, right? If you don't have healthcare, you die. So you will pay whatever price you have.
Oh my ears!
That is the most maximalist, most capitalist, most like free enterprise system has been an abject failure in terms of delivering good results. And what I mean by that is healthcare as a whole, it's government, or at least with like heavy market regulation and intervention.
I completely agree.
Because like healthcare, I think is a great example of this, where like it's an inelastic demand, good, and service, right? If you don't have healthcare, you die. So you will pay whatever price you have to pay for healthcare. And therefore, I think the American system that is the most maximalist, most capitalist, most like free enterprise.
I mean, I think a lot of people just give up on healthcare more than what he's saying. So,
system has been an abject failure in terms of delivering good results. And what I mean by that is healthcare as a whole is supposed to improve people's living standards and also make sure that everyone is getting the best quality care possible, right? And in the United States of America, we don't have that. We do have nicer hospitals that resemble hotels as
I'll be
opposed to
honest
like.
with you, it'd be difficult not to have a nicer hospital than the UK, mate.
Yeah, no, but I understand that. I'm from Turkey. I've seen the Turkish public hospitals, but I would rather try to focus on the diminished quality of service and try to improve that in a socialized system than to altogether limit healthcare at the point of being able to pay for it in the way that we have in the United States of America. And I think this is a major issue with America in general, is that we are so invested in improving our GDP. We're so invested in leaning into the forces of capital that in this sector and in many others, corruption still thrives. We have it in the form of corporate consolidation here in the United States of America, because in the absence of any sort of government intervention, trust busting, and heavy regulatory intervention, all corporations end up trying to seize one another and become a monopolistic force, and if not, an oligopoly, right? And many sectors have seen this. And when you become an oligopoly, you can diminish the quality of service that you're offering slowly but surely, because there's no market competition that exists any longer. So I guess the way I look at it is, in terms of corruption, you're right. There is a tendency, if the government is all powerful, even though the governments are always all powerful, there's a tendency in more centralized governance that if someone wants to be a ruthless autocrat, they can do so. And the people don't always have the capacity to rise up against that. But I would say that in the United States of America, for example, we also experience a similar dynamic. We just don't see it in the same way, because it's not the most direct form of authoritarianism, where a lot of people think, well, as long as I can eat a Big Mac, as long as I can watch TV, as long as I can consume porn and gamble on the unregulated cryptocurrency market, or gamble my modest income away, what remains after I give the rest to my landlord, then things are probably fine. And I think we dull our sensibilities in that regard. And I think it's a different form, it's a different mechanism of control that makes you think that you are actually an active participant.
Well, I mean, I think that's quite a stretch, Hasan, with all respect, because the difference between, we talk about some societies that have attempted to pursue communism, China.
Okay, I don't really care about the gambling take. If you want to waste your money on gambling, like, because you enjoy it, go right ahead. You know what you're doing. It's the same thing as drinking, smoking, anything. Anything bad you consume, and overconsumption is bad. Like, I think if you're playing gacha games or whatever, you're spending a couple dollars on gacha games or whatever, you're spending hundreds, you got some kind of problem. It's fine. But I feel like he's just like saying, like, again, it's like the argument, like, oh yeah, you have your personal liberties and you can do whatever you want, and oh man, they made something that you enjoy. Like, they're controlling you. You can't just say everything's controlling you. Like, you have to take some responsibility.
The Soviet Union, Venezuela, etc., right? The difference between those countries is not that they can't eat a Big Mac. The difference is that
these algorithmic feeds are fucking me right over. I know what I'm doing. I know I'm going on them too much, okay? And I know there's an addiction aspect to it. Realizing is the first part.
They criticize the government. In Russia today, but of course in the Soviet Union previously, you're going to get killed, right? In America, that's not what happens. Right? In America, you don't get...
We don't know yet. We don't know where we're going to go yet.
I mean, Hasan, to be fair, you're a very...
dynamic. We just don't see it in the same way, because it's not the most direct form of authoritarianism, where a lot of people think, well, as long as I can eat a Big Mac, as long as I can watch TV, as long as I can consume porn and gamble on the unregulated cryptocurrency market, or gamble my modest income away, what remains after I give the rest to my landlord, then things are probably fine. And I think we dull our sensibilities in that regard. And I think it's a different form, it's a different mechanism of control that makes you think that you are actually an active participant.
Well, I mean, I think that's quite a stretch, Hasan, with all respect, because the difference between, we talk about some societies that have attempted to pursue communism, China, the Soviet Union, Venezuela, etc., right? The difference between those countries is not that they can't eat a Big Mac. The difference is that if they criticize the government, in Russia today,
yeah, that's very true.
Ooh, gonna get killed, right?
This guy, I watched the podcast with Dave Smith. I was like, these guys, they really try to fight back. I kind of like that a lot. They're really good at it. That's the only other podcast I've watched with these guys.
Right? In America, you don't get...
We don't know yet. We don't know where we're going to go yet.
I mean, Hasan, to be fair, you're a very successful...
I agree with you.
In Russia today, even. The difference between those countries is not that they can't eat a Big Mac. The difference is that if they criticize the government, in Russia today, of course, in the Soviet Union previously, you're going to get killed. Right? In America, that's not what happens. Right? In America, you don't get...
We don't know yet. We don't know where we're going to go yet.
I mean, Hasan, to be fair, you're a very successful...
I agree with you.
You in China or in the Soviet Union would be killed if you were critical of that regime.
I would definitely be jailed.
You'd definitely be jailed. So that's the difference between these countries and America. It's not a Big Mac, it's freedom.
No, so I love that you brought that up, because I agree with that. I'm from Turkey, a country that has never had the First Amendment or freedom of speech. And ironically enough, the current regime, the person in charge of the current regime, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, was jailed in the past for a poem that he wrote for incitement, right? He read a poem about Atatürk, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and he was jailed, and now he's one of...
What do you write about?
A poem that he wrote for incitement, right? He read a poem about Atatürk.
Our bayonets, domes are our helmets, mosques are our barracks, believers are our soldiers. Yeah, good God.
believe, if I'm not mistaken, and he was jailed, and now he's one of the most ruthless jailers of the press in the country.
Right.
Now,
Damn.
so I come from that background. I can't go back to Turkey, for example,
Right.
for these reasons. I've written about Turkey extensively, and let's just say the administration is not super fond of me in my perspective. Having said that, that is the reason why I want the First Amendment to remain in the United States of America, even though, as I brought up earlier, there have been instances throughout American history where the First Amendment has been actively violated or threatened. There are still contemporary examples of violations of the First Amendment. One example I will use is the anti-boycott, divestment, and sanctions laws that exist in the United States of America. Famously was Bernie Sanders and Dianne Feinstein, rest in peace, who actively called it out. Two prominent Jewish politicians in the country. These are laws directly written by AIPAC, that dictate that if you want to become a school teacher in the state of Texas, for example, you have to sign a loyalty pledge to ensure that you never protest against the state of Israel. It's ridiculous, right? And it's a direct violation of the First Amendment. So there are there is encroachment towards the First Amendment.
That will always happen because people will always contest it. But the point I'm making to you is
I think any company that's gonna fire you for anything you say online should be held accountable. I think it should at least be argued in court and then decided. You should definitely be able to see that. Like, there's definitely people who got fired over the Charlie Kirk thing, and honestly, they should have every right to sue the people who fired them. But it really depends on the situation. Like, if you're an educational tutor and you're doing that, you're celebrating a school shooting. Yeah, you maybe don't deserve your job, and you kind of deserve to be fired. But if it's something like, oh, he said a bad word online, dude. People are saying bad words online since I was a kid. They still do today. It's never gonna stop. Well, what are we arguing about here? Come on.
In the Soviet Union and Venezuela to America, that is not an accurate comparison.
It's not an accurate comparison, but if you recall earlier, I just said, I'm worried that we here in the
That's
United States of America are now
moving
in that direction in terms
Cash
of
Patel's girlfriend suing people. I think Amy Dangerfield was kind of making that out into some like what was it? Oh, the government's coming after the people and a super dangerous thing. I don't like full disagree with it, but are they really coming after it? It seems like just like some mad bitch getting like trying to do some like defamation thing, fame with their head. She just so happens to be married to the FBI director. I think it's still bad that she's doing it. It's still like definitely bad look all around, but I don't think it's necessarily a government oppression.
In terms of
it is bad, it's stupid as fuck though. I think there's just too much problems within the Supreme Courts. Not Supreme Courts, but just the courts in general, the judicial system, how it works. I think it just needs the most major reform known to man. That's like the only like.
This is around Israel and what people decry as anti-Semitism.
I think that's what we really need all around. I think that fixes most things.
Active, the
Yo,
active
you are
administration is taking.
Tough, pal.
Yesterday, my friend Kat Abuzale, who used to be a reporter who's now running in Illinois for Congress, was indicted. She was indicted because she participated in protesting against ICE outside of an ICE facility. And there are videos of her getting slammed to the ground in the concrete with this militarized, masked federal police force, right? Not only did they beat her up, which was already ridiculous to begin with, but then they also chose to indict her. There are examples of students writing for their student newspaper and getting kidnapped and thrown into a immigrant detention facility. Whether it be Mahmoud Khalil, who still has an ongoing legal case for being a student activist, a student protester, and having a green card while doing it.
We have the same thing in our country in different ways. I hear you. Sorry, the reason I'm interrupting you is we've moved sideways from the topic. So remember where we started this conversation, right? So just to address your point.
Repression didn't start in China by everybody being like, all right, it's over, we're throwing you in jail. It builds up to it is what I'm. And it's entirely dependent on the starting point. Because if you were looking at China, if you're looking at the Chinese Civil War, post-World War II,
you never know the Civil War, so I'm not going to argue too much on the stuff.
Japanese imperialists, like that's a very different material, that's a very different set of material circumstances for the end of that Civil War and to develop governance.
I'm just trying to bring you back to the central argument, the central discussion we're having. Francis made the point that when the government...
The good governance can exist, and I think good governance is a lot more hands-off, honestly, more than anything. I think that's an overwhelming sentiment.
That is a situation which inevitably then...
Any kind of governing force over your life, you should be liberated from it.
I take your point about individual protesters or individual people who've made statements about...
The only governing force over your life is G.O.D., baby.
We have the same thing in our country where people are being sent to prison for tweets that they've done, right? Left and right. We've got Palestine Action on the left. We've got right people criticizing immigration.
No, please
so
help
I agree with you. The direction of travel in the West in terms of freedom of expression is not good. And I've made that point in my book and elsewhere.
Get out of my face. I gotta get my shit.
The point we're trying to make, which is the system of government. Your point. about individual protesters or individual people who've made statements about a highly controversial issue today. We have the same thing in our country where people are being sent to prison for tweets that they've done, right? Left and right. We've got Palestine Action on the left.
I don't think anyone's arguing things like this shouldn't be happening. Like, obviously, this should not be happening, you know? But the unfortunate thing is, like, these things do happen. And, like, we should always fight against it. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, we should always fight against it.
Wing people criticizing immigration. So I agree with you. The direction of travel in the West in terms of freedom of expression is not good. And
On principle, you have to, especially on a freedom of speech principle, you have to disagree with it. If you don't, then it's like, what?
Are open to, based on our discussion today, at least, inevitably leads to authoritarianism, which inevitably leads to repression on a scale that a Western country won't imagine. Isn't that's the reason that a lot of people are very worried about people like you who say they're open to communism. We all know smartphones are essential. I'm just trying to bring you back to the central argument, central discussion we're having. Francis made the point that when the government is in a position to be authoritarian, where it seems to inevitably end up in every communist country in the history of the world, right? That is a situation which inevitably then leads to levels of repression of the kind that you will not see in America for 100 years. I take your point about individual protesters or individual people who've made statements about a highly controversial issue today. We have the same thing in our country where people are being sent to prison for tweets that they've done, right? Left and right. We've got Palestine Action on the left. We've got right-wing people criticizing immigration. So I agree with you. The direction of travel in the West in terms of freedom of expression is not good. And I've made that point in my book and elsewhere. But that is not the same as what the point we're trying to make, which is the system of government you are open to, based on our discussion today at least, inevitably leads to authoritarianism, which inevitably leads to repression on a scale that a Western country won't imagine. Isn't that's the reason that a lot of people are very worried about people like you who say they're open to communism. We all know smartphones are essential, but they've also become the ultimate surveillance machines. That's why we were so interested when former trigonometry guest Eric Prince created the UP phone. This isn't just another handset.
It's just honestly quite annoying to listen to socialists or communists. And again, most of these socialists are communists. Like, they're not going to say it out loud, but if the end goal is communism and they say, like, they're like, oh yeah, well, I'm just a socialist and I don't think communism would ever happen, but, you know, I'm going to push for it anyways. I just don't think it's going to happen in my lifetime. Okay, so you're a communist. I think my policies actually work towards communism. But they're socialist policies. They work towards communism. I don't know what you're talking about.
Free from big tech ecosystems. It comes with a firewall that blocks third-party trackers and gives you full transparency into who's trying to access your data. And it works straight out of the box. I got one of these myself because I want to know my phone is serving me, not Google, not Apple, and not some faceless data broker. And that's the point. Your phone should serve you, not
communism leads to authoritarianism. This is an interesting conversation.
And use our code trigonometry for $20 off a protective case with the UP phone.
I like these guys a lot.
Here, I'll try to put a nice button on it, okay? The reason why the United States of America and countries that are under the security apparatus, the global security umbrella of the United States of America, have had much more success with liberal democracy as opposed to all these other countries that are not under the immediate security umbrella is because it's been the domineering force around the globe, especially after the end of the Cold War, but even during the Cold War, it was a dominant force on the planet. When you are the dominant force, you get to have these freedoms. Your people get to have these freedoms. Your people get to say whatever they want because they're not a threat, right? I would be more of a threat in the respective nation that I'm in if they don't have that same level of security. And that is the reason why I'm very fearful, because as America's power on the global stage is waning, we are going to see more direct authoritarianism coming from Western nations as liberalism decays, as it did in the 20s and the 30s. And what came after that was a wave of fascism. Now, fascism at that time was seen as a revolutionary thing, was seen as a new thing. In many instances, fascists were actually fashioning themselves as though they were like a different kind of socialist, even though they were mostly killing socialists and had their beef with socialists, and then they were able to align with liberals eventually and become the domineering authoritarian forces. And I think you guys wouldn't disagree with me that, like, Italy's Mussolini and Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany were ruthless fascist forms of governance where there was unimaginable repression. My fear is that is where capitalism inevitably leads, if left unaddressed, because capitalism is always going to deteriorate. It's slowly going to improve material conditions as opposed to feudalism. It's a far better system, for sure, far better than monarchy, right? I agree. But there will come a point where it outlives its usefulness, and those who own the capital, the owners of capital, will have to make a decision. There's too much instability, there's too much chaos. We need to restore order. And if they can't do that through liberal democracy, at least historically, especially when there is a counterbalance, revolutionary socialism out there that they are genuinely fearful of, work stoppages happening all around, and the flows of capital being disrupted, and profit margins are threatened, they end up finding fascism to be that domineering force that restores the law and order, so that people are still working in the factories, and any kind of dissent is directly and indirectly suppressed. And I fear that is where we're moving in the United States of America, as America's global superpower status is threatened by fascism to be that domineering force that restores the law and order, so that people are still working in the factories, and any kind of dissent is directly and indirectly suppressed. And I fear that that is where we're moving in the United States of America, as America's global superpower status is threatened by the rise of China.
So your thesis is that as country, if a different country was dominant, was a global hegemon, they would have more freedom for their citizens.
Yeah.
So you think the Chinese Communist Party would allow criticism of them if they were the dominant country in the
I
world?
think with respect to where they were in terms of like, I mean, the most maximalist position is the Cultural Revolution, right? Like if you look at the Cultural Revolution versus where China is now in terms of dissent, it's in comparison to the United States of America, yes, there's still heavy control over that sort of stuff. There's a lot of surveillance. Having said that, it has become far more tolerant as material conditions have improved. And that's my main thesis, is that countries, regardless of their individual forms of governance, as long as they are advancing the material needs of the broadest subsect of the masses, will and become like a domineering force on their own and have full sovereignty and full autonomy, they will inevitably become more tolerant to this kind of freedom, because this is the most successful way, I think, of making sure that the masses feel satisfied. Civil liberties is the most successful way that I think neoliberalism has become a hegemonic power, beyond the endless militarism and whatnot. I think that is the reason why people feel the way that they do in the United States of America, in spite of all of the alarm bells that are ringing about how economic devastation is imminent, seemingly, or there's so much poverty and so much instability, and people still go, well, at least I got some freedoms, right? As opposed to not having those freedoms elsewhere. So that's my main thesis, is that if they improve material conditions, they have to inevitably allow more civil liberties, more social liberties.
So it's interesting what you've been saying about America, and that it's losing its power on the global stage.
They
That is
improve
then reflected
material
more and more.
conditions. I can agree with that to some extent, like with universal basic income. I mean, here's the thing: these things that they're implementing come at a cost of like if it's not like an actual like material cost, it's gonna be a cost to your own freedoms. That's my thesis. So we'll see.
More and more, shall we say, imbalanced chaos in the actual society itself. And we've kind of seen that in a way with the assassination of Charlie Kirk, with Luigi Mangione. I found some of your comments really
Yeah,
interesting.
I want to push for more libertarianism and Gorsuch, and I'm still even learning what that is, just because it's a different direction which nobody's ever really seen.
Talk to you about them.
And
So
America's
you
just
said,
a different
and correct me
nation.
if I'm
We're
wrong,
built different.
push back on me if I'm wrong, that you think that he's innocent and unfairly maligned. How did you come to that position, if I'm correct?
Well, I mean, that's a meme for the most part.
Oh, okay.
But
What,
the,
what does it mean? It's a meme.
the
like,
the
we're
notion,
not humans, we're like elderly
the notion
millennials.
that someone is innocent until proven guilty, or that he wasn't there, it's like a common thing that people do on TikTok and elsewhere as well. But
But you don't think he's innocent?
well, I don't know. I don't know if he's the one that actually did it or not. We'll see once the court case finalizes.
But is he? Sorry, I may not understand what meme means in this context. Like, I guess what I'm asking, when you say he's unfairly maligned, do you
this
believe
is
that
a
or
lot
not? That's
faster.
what I'm asking.
Well, as far as unfairly maligned, it depends on where the quote is coming from. Because I could be talking about like being perp walked or getting hit with a terrorism charge, which was actually taken off recently, because the New York courts also found that it was overextended to this case. I think there was a lot of panic around his actions.
It should not be
around
hard
it.
to give this
And
guy like
that
20 years
is,
in
I don't know
prison.
what I was talking about, if you're talking about that. But as far as like, oh, Luigi's innocent, it's just like a thing to say. As far as innocent until
Why do they
proven
say
guilty.
it?
I think that is actually the more interesting conversation.
Okay.
The reason that, and I had a conversation with
I don't know why this is
Ross
part of the
Dow.
conversation, but okay. I mean, yeah, they're like, wait a minute.
about this on the New York Times.
So
where
I
he brought
get
this
the
up on
argument
numerous
where it's like,
occasions.
okay, well, you have the healthcare industry
people
purposely
are
denying a bunch of
experiencing
people who have been paying into the healthcare for a long time. They're just purposely killing people at that point. Is the killing of the
tremendous anger
CEO
and discontent.
justified?
And one of the most visible aspects of that, one of the visible aspects of a system of healthcare that should
Not
be
really. I
privatized,
mean,
or
it's
should
not
capitalize, even if
in a
privatized,
civil
work to
society. It's not
make sure that
justified,
every
but the
single
anger
person
is
has the adequate care that they
understandable.
need, otherwise they die. It has created this environment of
'Cause it
tremendous
is-
anger. It is almost
Yeah, there you go.
virtually
I agree with
universalized
Hasan
pain.
on that.
Every single American knows at least one immediate or distant relative that has suffered through chemotherapy.
You know,
that
here's
they
the problem I will
hunt
say
down
that I don't
their-
think people
their,
understand is like they'll watch these interviews and podcasts and stuff, and you gotta know, like, they're presenting themselves in the best light. Okay, you gotta go to the actual like streams and stuff. Like even Nick Fuentes to an extent does the same thing. They're all like, I mean, again, they're putting themselves in the best light, and you either have to take it like, okay, they're actually putting their best foot forward and being authentic, or they're really just like, you know, it's just natural conversation. They're kind of like messing up here and there. You know, regular stuff happens. I try not to think too much about it, really. But, you know, there's the other side of it where, like, they're just kind of, like, propagandizing themselves. I hate using that term, but, you know what I mean. It's like, just playing things up. Why is this shit not working?
insurance provider to make sure that the thing that they were paying for years and years, the premiums, the costly premiums that they were paying into, actually end up helping them cover the cost of this life-saving quality care that they desperately need to survive. And I think a lot of Americans have so much discontent for that experience that they have seen personally that
insurance companies are scamming. Everybody knows it.
Before they even found out who had done.
It's a matter of the fact that the government has been protecting them. That's what I mean. When like government just needs to take their hands off certain industries, and maybe like they just need to. I mean, honestly, what you just want is smarter regulation at the end of the day.
Was met with.
I can always talk about like, oh, why less government this and less government that, and to some extent, yeah. I think healthcare is a little bit more different,
as well as I think many
to the extent of corruption we have in America.
They're very black and white.
Some people are willing to give those liberties
up. A lot worse than you would get punished elsewhere, right?
I don't necessarily. Here's my thing: is I've had Medicare before. I think it's pretty mid.
We throw you in jail and we torture you.
I remember watching Steven Crowder talk about how he had the universal healthcare in Canada when he lived there, and how it was really slow. And I agree. I came to the same conclusion after having it for what, 2 years. It's just like I didn't really feel like I had like a real healthcare provider, more than just a guy I'd see like once he really just came like, oh, so how you doing? Change your diet, do this. And listen, I don't disagree with anything he really said there, but he wasn't really addressing the issues I have. I won't get into it personal because regular health issues, but like he just wasn't really addressing the issues and really like. I feel like I actually did need something prescribed in this case, and he wasn't really like helping me with that when I was trying to tell him like, hey, this is weird, that I have something weird going on. So overall, like, I've heard more people have better experiences from like non-profits that don't really have to like take any healthcare insurance. I've heard they have better experiences and ironically more affordable. So again, like, I think the free market could take care of itself. I just don't think Medicare needs to be a thing, and I think they need to regulate the health insurance companies in the industry more, rather than bailing out these like scam-ass insurance companies. And it's gonna get to that point. I feel like that. If they were to actually enforce any sort of real like law for any insurance company to actually engage in honest practice, it'd be fucked. So. And that's why you have to go to court, and that's why Morgan & Morgan, like, I wonder, like, do you think Morgan & Morgan has, like, I mean, okay, I'm sure they do. They have some kind of lobbying going on in Congress or something where it's just like, I don't know, it's like, I mean, I'm sure they're just capitalizing off an issue. That's a problem, and that's kind of the point of capitalism. It's capitalize off stuff and benefit yourself. And build up the self-accumulation of wealth, which everyone's entitled to.
Of how much harm.
So I agree. I agree with I'd say about 40% of what Hasan says. Other 60%.
The sector has done to so many different people in this country. I think they saw it as like, okay, well, this guy is the faceless placeholder for the person, for the system that actually killed my grandparents. Like that's the way they saw it.
I get the anger,
which I don't think is healthy, for the record.
Okay. Well, this is what I'm getting to, is like, I understand anger. And by the way, I don't want to wade into the debate about American healthcare. I don't know a lot about it. I understand there's some really bad situations for people. People should also know that in the UK, there's also lots of people who are dying without care because they're waiting for an operation for a year and a half, or they're waiting 2 months for a scan. But let's not get into that.
No, but the NHS
in my situation is like, again, there's so many people on Medicare that like the next time you'd want to see your doctor is like a month or 2 months from now. If you have an urgent issue, they're not gonna really address it. Though if most urgent care isn't gonna take Medicare or Medi-Cal, and you're gonna end up going to the emergency room, which I've known like at least 2 or 3 people who have.
Are you familiar with
and then it's kind of embarrassing because like you're there and like, oh, my tummy hurts, and then you have somebody who's like shot in the leg or something. It's like, oh, and the doctor's just there like kind of making you feel bad, like, yeah, I just gotta go to this other room. Some guy's like blowing, like his legs just blowing blood out or something.
To the recipient, to the victim.
I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry, I have a little.
They see that as an unnecessary.
My chest feels a little,
they feel that in the same way that Brian Thompson's family, I'm sure, was and it still is mourning the death of Brian Thompson. There are millions of Americans out there that have individuals in their lives that they loved, loved ones, immediate loved ones, distant relatives that they've seen suffer in their final moments as they go through the process of trying to figure out the paperwork in a system that is designed to, let's be real, take as much money as possible from you in the form of premiums, and then create a profit incentive by refusing to pay for the healthcare.
I don't necessarily even disagree with the fact that like healthcare should be like more non-profit, non-profit healthcare are gonna do better. It's gonna be the next wave.
and I empathize with that pain that those people feel. But what I'm getting at is
Medicare is not the way. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, they need to give up on the Medicare just a little bit, or at least there needs to be massive Medicare reform. But like they tried, but I mean, again, you take away funding from certain parts of Medicare that have a bunch of fraud in it, they're just gonna attack you for it. Like, look at him destroying Medicare. But it's like, it's true, there was fraud in a lot of
healthcare company.
And it's not like Medicare is still around. So what are people like really fucking crying about here?
And they are angry.
Especially Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal is still around. It's California. I mainly try to protect California
issues. Just flat out wrong.
Well, my reason for
I
saying
do
it is
not
because
leave.
you're innocent until proven guilty. But as far as what everyone else is saying, or if I'm to analyze it, which I do as a part of my job, what I'm trying to explain to you guys is that from their perspective, it's revenge. And this is a very, very unhealthy feeling to have. This is why I talked about with Ross that the concept of adventurism. This is something that traditional Marxists.
I don't think it's revenge. It's more like, I think most people are like, I have this kind of, again, a free market thinking of like, we don't really care if it dies. It's more about what comes after it, you know?
Any sort of serious changes, any sort of serious
I wouldn't say it's
revolution, especially, and all it does is create an environment of instability. I think that the perfect solution to ensure that this never happens, to ensure that there's no level of discontent that bubbles up to this degree, that would require a mechanism of enforcement by the government to enact stability, of course, which would also be just as violent, if not even more brutal, to a larger percentage of the population to ensure that there isn't another, Luigi Mangione-style situation. Is good legislation, is fixing these systemic problems. Luigi Mangione is the breaking point. Luigi Mangione is the perfect demonstration of the system failing people. And I think that Luigi Mangione and the response to him has been one of the clearest examples that I have seen in a country like the United States of America, where people are normally supposed to be like horrified by cold-blooded murder in the middle of the day. Their response being much more receptive to the action shows me that there's so much pain in people's immediate experiences that they recognize this disability. They don't have a vehicle to communicate it. They don't have a vehicle to communicate this discontent, and they're simply moving into the least productive way to do politics, which is revenge, violent revenge. I think that that is something that we have to solve immediately, because you can't have more people just like randomly gunning people in the streets. That's not what a civilized society is supposed to work towards. That's instability, that's chaos. I don't want that.
Let me introduce you to the people I work with to protect my family against financial instability, inflation, and turmoil. For me, one of the best ways to safeguard your wealth is by investing in gold, and that's why I trust the Pure Gold Company. Here's a smart tip. If you buy UK minted gold coins like sovereigns, you won't pay VAT when you buy them or capital gains tax when you sell. All the profit is yours to keep. And the best part? Gold is a completely private investment. It's outside the banking system, so it can't be manipulated by governments or anyone else. Unlike digital assets, it's yours in the truest sense. The Pure Gold Company is trusted by first-time investors and seasoned professionals alike. What I really appreciate about them is a knowledgeable, pressure-free approach. They explain everything clearly, so you feel confident about your decisions, and they never push you to buy it. Physical gold has stood the test of time as a store of value, and it offers peace of mind that other assets can't match. Nice. It's reassuring to know that even if the banking system falters, your gold and its value remains safe. Whether you're looking to diversify your investments, protect your savings, or just gain the security of owning a real physical asset, we recommend the Pure Gold Company. Click the link in the description or go to pure-gold.co/trigger to get your free copy of the investor guide. That's pure-gold.co/trigger. Take control of your financial future today.
So one of the things that I found shocking with the assassination of Charlie Kirk is obviously the incident itself, but it's also the reaction.
Yes, I was just watching this yesterday.
And the rhetoric that went around it. The people on the left who were celebrating it, which to me is, and to most right-thinking people, is absolutely abhorrent. And also the reaction on the left, and there were some people, particularly large influencers, whose what they said was unforgivable. Where did you stand on it, and what were your opinions on the whole incident?
I mean, I was shocked. It was horrifying, but mainly horrifying because like it's impossible for me not to have a personal stake in this, because I was about to debate Charlie in 2 weeks, like 2 weeks prior to his assassination, or 2 weeks after his assassination. We were supposed to be debating at Dartmouth College, and this was a person that I had basically developed a political career in competition with, if that makes sense. Like I was on the left side, he was on the right side. We debated plenty of times. We debated Politicon. We were very familiar with one another, and seeing that the number one fear that every person that does what I do become reality in real time was shocking. It was devastating. As far as my opinions on it, I mean, I had the misfortune of seeing it in real time happen as I was like trying to figure out what had taken place, and we were one of the first media outlets that actually broke the story.
Okay.
And my first thought was that this is going to lead to even more violence in the form of revenge, decentralized violence, and also that this is going to lead to state repression as well, in an effort to stamp out any kind of political discontent or any kind of political
No
dissent,
real
which
revenge
hasn't
violence has
fully
happened,
come to
so
fruition yet, thankfully, but the administration certainly tried to use this as an opportunity to build new guidelines around surveillance and build new surveillance targets in general. The Trump administration has this, they released a memorandum, national security memorandum, that declared the intelligence communities to shift their priorities and attention of surveillance to Antifa, which they had previously declared a domestic terrorist organization, which is not a designation that exists in the United States of America because it is at direct odds with the First Amendment. This is the reason why the KKK is not considered a domestic terror organization. This is the reason why the Proud Boys and Atomwaffen, which is like a neo-Nazi formation that tries to recruit from the military, none of these guys are none of these organizations, even if you would normally consider them domestic terror organizations, are actually considered that. So it was a severe violation of the First Amendment, and then the follow-up to the surveillance targets and the surveillance priorities made me even more fearful about where this administration was going, where they declared any sort of anti-Christian, anti-capitalist, anti-American sentiment to be an indication of someone being an extremist, violent terrorist potentially. But then on top of that, there was even more vague things that they brought up.
I don't necessarily disagree with them doing this stuff because it was like some Republicans, like, you know, kind of maintaining to their base, like, okay, well, we saw this stuff happen, they're responding to it, so it's like, okay, well, you know, maybe just don't put out toxic sentiment in bad political times.
Was now up for grabs in terms of priority targets.
But that is bad
for the surveillance
in terms
apparatus.
of,
and
I agree with him in
like
terms of the surveillance
where this is going to go
part.
for the time being. It is directly at odds with the First Amendment, but
it's not good when stuff like this happens. And again,
Kat Abou-Ghazaleh, like I said, who's running for office, is like one of the first.
I feel like he's not really addressing the main issue of the question he asked, though, which was about, like, you know, the celebration of the left.
Targeted in this way, and I worry that once free speech goes away and once due process goes away in this country,
it's not gonna go away, you idiot.
Fascist.
But I think that's a very valid point. My concern is as well, and it's the rhetoric that is getting ratcheted up on both sides.
Free speech is in
Both on
our
the right, both on the
constitution.
left.
It's never
So, for
going to
instance,
go
I'll give you an
away.
example. In my own
Okay.
country, we have Zara Sultana, who's a very prominent left-wing politician. She said the words, we need to fight the fascists in parliament. I'm like, okay. We need to fight them in the ballot box, and we need to fight them in the streets. Now, the problem is, if you ask most people what fascism is, I don't think they would be able to give you a clear and coherent explanation or an analysis of the political ideology.
Well, let's be honest, by fascist, she means people like Reform who are not fascist. They are a centre-right party, they're not fascist.
So,
I don't know if I'd agree with that.
right, but the point...
Well, hold on a second. You think the Reform Party is
I think
fascist?
the Reform Party, as it stands currently, is a nascent fascist parliamentary group that hasn't reached its full potential yet.
Could you define
in the same way that
fascism in this instance?
In the same way that I would say the modern Republican Party is, or was, throughout most of its history, a liberal party, a far right, but liberal party nonetheless, and it is becoming an illiberal or post-liberal party that is moving in the direction of fascism. Fascism is what's the best definition for it? Pallian genetic ultranationalism. A in-group, out-group dynamic that is constantly seeking to destroy the out-group and dominate the out-group, even if the out-group is actually a part of civilized society, and surrounding itself with this like mythologized understanding of this national or ethnic or religious mythology of the higher group.
But it would also include authoritarianism, the end of a one-party state, like all of
Not
these.
always, but yeah, usually, yes.
So by which of those standards would you say Reform is a fascist or I can't remember how you said a nascent fascist party?
Well, the reason why I say that is because, I mean, Mussolini's fascist party was not a party that Mussolini's fascist party was an active fascist party within
I want to go over his
before
definition of
If you ask
fascism.
most people what fascism is, I don't think they would be able to give you a clear or coherent explanation or an analysis of the political
Well,
ideology.
let's be honest, by fascist she means people like Reform who are not fascist. They are a centre-right party, they're not fascist.
So,
I don't know if I'd agree with that.
right, but the
Well,
point...
hold on a second. You think the Reform Party is
I think the Reform
fascist?
Party, as it stands currently, is a nascent fascist parliamentary group that hasn't reached its full potential yet.
Could you define
in the same way that
fascism in this instance?
in the same way that I would say the modern Republican Party is, or was, throughout most of its history, a liberal party, a far right, but liberal party nonetheless, and it is becoming an illiberal or post-liberal party that is moving in the direction of fascism. Fascism is what's the best definition for it? Pallian genetic ultranationalism. A in-group, out-group dynamic that is constantly seeking to destroy the out-group and dominate the out-group, even if the out-group is actually a part of civilized society, and surrounding itself with this like mythologized understanding of this national or ethnic or religious mythology of the higher group.
But it would also include authoritarianism, the end.
I don't know. I think so. bugging out right now.
Well, hold on a second. You
Definition
think the
is
Reform Party is
I think Reform
fascist?
Party, as it
Alright,
stands
I
currently,
can
is a
go over this
nascent
another time, sorry.
fascist parliamentary group that hasn't reached its full potential yet.
Could you define
in the same way that I would,
fascism in this instance?
in the same way that I would say the modern Republican Party is or was throughout most of its history a liberal party, a far right but liberal party nonetheless, and it is becoming an illiberal or post-liberal party that is moving in the direction of fascism. Fascism is what's the best definition for it? Paleo-genetic ultranationalism,
I feel like all the fascism is like online, and in real life it's not as much as they think.
Even if the outgroup is actually a part of civilized society, and surrounding itself with mythologizing this national or ethnic or religious mythology of the
I do think there is like I think this is this definitely describes Nick like this.
Include authoritarianism, the end of a one-party state, like all of these.
Not always, but yeah, usually, yes.
So by which of those standards would you say Reform is a fascist or neo? I can't remember how you said a nascent fascist party.
Well, the reason why I say that is because I mean Mussolini's fascist party was not a party that I mean Mussolini's fascist party was an active fascist party within the parliament before it became the centralized form of governance.
But they said we are fascist, right?
I know, but that was because the word fascism was just being invented at that point, and therefore it was still packaged as like a revolutionary, new, illiberal way.
Okay,
they didn't come into power. We now live in a post-World War II universe where like you can't say that you're fascist.
So you think that if Nigel Farage, which is currently they're leading the polls, you think that if he is elected, eventually he will suspend democracy?
I don't think they're really trying to suppress democracy at all.
Using the state.
So I would not say
have a
they're
one-party state. You think that's what this is heading?
Bearing in mind that the chairman of Reform Party is a Muslim.
Yeah, still doesn't matter. I mean, there was Jews that worked within the Nazi government command structure as well. It's just like there are always going to be people that come from they come from the background of the targeted outgroup in general, and it doesn't even end with Muslims, is what I mean. It's going to it always has to excise what it considers aberrations, and there's always, like with Nazi Germany, for example, the next stage, if they hadn't failed so dramatically in its endless militarism, would have most likely been to create the Übermensch structure, like the start going after people who were maybe brown-haired and didn't have blue eyes. Like there's an endless expansion of that sort.
And you think that's what Reform will do? They'll suspend democracy, they'll start a one-party
state. This is super in the future if they actually get to that point, but I don't think that it is far-fetched to assume that yes, Reform through a process of initially reforms, I could totally see them getting to that position. Yes.
What's your basis for saying that?
It's entirely dependent on how material conditions unwind. If it gets to a point where there's tremendous economic stability, then instead of solving those issues in the same way that the American movement, the Trump movement, is not solving these issues, they will continue to be a force of political repression.
But what's your evidence for this? This is the thing I don't understand.
The evidence is the historical patterns that I'm looking at. The historical patterns of why fascism has been implemented in the past. And now, like I said, we live in a post-fascist world. We live in a nuclear world. The dynamic is different, okay? So fascism will not come as a third way, as an outsider any longer. I think instead, you will see far-right elements within liberal society, within the parliamentary structure, move in that direction.
But my worry with this is, and this is why I'm not trying to like debate bro you or anything, I'm genuinely engaging with what you say. I hope you feel that, right?
Yeah.
The issue I have in the context of the discussion we're having about Charlie Kirk is, you've got a situation where people who are calling Reform fascist, I know some people in Reform, they're not fascist. They don't believe in a one-party state. They don't want to end democracy, right? We've had Nigel Farage on our show. It's very clear where he's an old-school Thatcherite kind of guy, right? But you're saying he's a fascist.
I will say, I do think the fascists are overtaking a part of the conversation. I think Hasan's one of them, to be honest.
He is.
I think he will get there.
Okay, you're saying he will get to fascism. Fair.
If material conditions get to a point where there's mass instability in an effort to
It's a nascent fascist party that in the right context will become fascist. I get it, right?
In the same, not dissimilar to the AFD, the nationalist France.
Reform is very different from the AFD, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
My point is this. If I thought the fascists were coming, I would feel it's my duty to participate in armed resistance against that. And my worry is part of where the political violence is coming from is people like you who are using this term, in my opinion, far too loosely and projecting historical analogies onto people that you're not that familiar with, actually. Yeah. And then you're really putting the target on their back. And my worry is the reason
think Charlie Kirk is
there were far too many people calling him a fascist, which he wasn't,
no,
right?
Genuinely, he really wasn't. I literally don't get how you actually think he was.
And
oh my god. Why is my thing bugging? Come on now.
That's my concern with all of this irresponsible language, which I think it is.
Especially extreme nationalism. It was very modern nationalism.
Language here is the fact that you can't really point to a single Democratic Party politician that has celebrated Charlie Kirk's death, but you can actually, in many instances, point to Republican politicians that have made a mockery of
Absolutely.
the democratic
And we've had
legislators.
people make that point in the show. You don't need to make it because we've had. But you're on the left, and I'm asking you about left-wing
The reason why I'm
approach.
saying that is because like there are always going to be people on the right and on the left that engage in this kind of commentary as a reflection of how much discontent that they experience. But ultimately, if
I'm
we're
saying
talking
you're one
about
of them. You are calling reform fascist.
no. That's a totally. First of all, my analysis on the like calling someone a fascist if they're exhibiting historic fascist tendencies is perfectly valid. The consideration that this actually is like turning up the temperature as opposed to like directly calling for violence against a nascent fascist party, as opposed to trying to deal with it through the existing means within the democratic structure is ridiculous. There's no comparison here. Fascist movements, when they were initially forming, albeit in a much more violent time, engaged in street protests, and there were counter protests against it. Like I'm in favor of always exhausting all available options within the confines of liberal democracy. And I think what the problem is that a lot of people point to the endpoint of fascism and what they know is the endpoint of fascism and say, well, they have to be dealt with militarily, and the time for that is now. I'm saying the time for that is not here, and I hope that it never gets there, so that we can successfully resist against growing fascist movements that are born out of initially distractions or red herrings that put the crosshairs on some of the more vulnerable populations, and try to deal with it within the existing confines of liberal democracy, and then try to get our politicians to address some of these material problems so that we don't have to exhibit the instability and even potentially a fascist form of governance that comes out of that instability that then at that point will be resisted against militarily through sabotage or through direct acts of war.
The issue that I have with your argument, Hasan, is this: is you're saying they're exhibiting, so on the way to fascism. You can make that argument about Keir Starmer and go, we're on the way to communism. but you laugh. But there are people on the right who say that.
It's true. It's. Oh my God! I believe the fascism claims. To be honest, I just don't think it's like to a fucking crazy extent. Do I think Mamdani, or not Mamdani, but like, do I think Mamdani has communist followers? 100% he does. Okay, there's people who genuinely consider themselves communists out there. You just have to like realize that it's true. I know people with
communism, but I think if you describe people as communists in this country,
and if they're not communists, they're tankies and they're coping and they're saying they're democratic socialists. But when it comes to the task, they're more communists.
I think you're putting the crosshairs on people. I really do, because there are people.
I get called a terrorist every day.
And I think that's disgusting. That's putting crosshairs on you. And I absolutely, vehemently would say that is unacceptable. But my point is, when you use that language of fascism or communist, these are labels that have a very, very real emotional trigger to people, understandably so. And what you have in this country is, unfortunately, there is a decent swathe of the population who have severe mental illnesses, plus access to guns.
Yeah,
and
that's this guy's spitting facts. They're really spitting facts.
Or it leads to somebody on the left like you, but God forbid happening.
Oh, I get a lot of death threats. Don't worry.
No, but
everybody does.
It's a sign that a society is in crisis, and I agree. And I think that it's our responsibility, both people on this side, both people on your side, that we ratchet it down, Hasan.
I think that if we're talking about increasing the tension, people in positions of power have a lot more responsibility than random citizens that are, in many instances, reacting to that.
In all due respect, we're not random citizens. We've both successful. We've both got huge platforms.
But no, I was just talking about like the broader left that you were talking about that said like, oh, they're celebrating Charlie Kirk or whatever. But beyond that. In terms of applying analysis to the actions of any person, Charlie Kirk or Nick Fuentes or whoever, and say that these are people who are implementing a lot of bigoted tendencies, a lot of racist opinions, and moving the American political direction towards fascist governance. I don't think that saying that you shouldn't be able to say that because you're invoking you're
just put Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes in the same sentence and compare them together.
It's not true, and it certainly makes a lot of people very angry, and they want to talk to me all the time.
This is what we're talking about. They're radically different.
It is unfortunately a part of the political discourse. I wish it didn't exist, but having said that, I am never going to stop myself from making accurate assessments and warning people that at this stage we are at the precipice of something far more dangerous, especially in Western liberal democracy, as liberalism is genuinely failing, and that collapse is most likely going to bring about a lot of fascist governance that will try to restore order in the most militant ways, and it will resemble historic fascist patterns.
Hasan, look, firstly, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for entering into the spirit of debate in the way it's intended. Really appreciate it. Final question is always the same. What's the one thing we're not talking about that we really should be?
I mean, we did talk quite a bit about the collapse of liberalism around the globe. I guess in this instance, and I can't speak to all the other conversations that you guys have had, we didn't get to talk about Israel too much, and that's something that I wanted to talk about, which has also exhibited historical patterns of fascism in and of itself, in a vein that is not dissimilar to what we're seeing in Western liberal democracies as well.
All right, but that's what we had more time. Yeah. Maybe next time we can pick up some other topic.
All right.
Appreciate your time. Thanks, man.
Thanks for having me.
Pretty good. Pretty good interview. Pretty good debate. Yeah. Hasan's a communist. I mean, it's just true. He literally, like, And listen, I don't necessarily have a problem with him being in the political sphere and having his say in politics. I dare I say, I don't even necessarily have a problem with the Communist Party in American politics, because they put up so much front, like the whole right wing put so much front in the capitalist party. And like, to be fair, I think most right wing people are at the point where, okay, well, like, honestly, the whole left wing party is just gonna be a bunch of sleeper commies in next year. Not next year, in the next like couple years, it's just gonna happen. And the right wing is gonna maybe not be super fascist. I just think it's gonna start leading more towards libertarian thoughts, because I think what everyone sees nowadays, especially like Charlie was really the only conservative worth following. Even Candace Owens doesn't even really believe in conservatism anymore, or at least like any real like political ideology. She doesn't like subscribe. I'm sure she is still more of a conservative if you had to put her on a spectrum, but like, you know, she definitely is. What am I saying? But I don't think she really subscribes herself to the Republican Party anymore or anything like that either. Because people know it's a scam. Let me go ahead and fit this back to scale. Oh, whatever. What happened to my device? There we go. Oh, sorry, gotta fix this. There you go. Whatever. That's the best we're getting. Sorry. Not perfect borders. Alright, we'll take a break and then I'll come back later.